Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Nick the Brave Chemo Kitties and Canines podcast. I'm your host, Nick the Brave. As someone battling cancer, I know how important it is to stay positive in the rough times. This is the only podcast that looks at the heroes behind the scene who help people that need it the most. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Nick the Brave Chemo Kitties and Canines podcast. I'm your host, Nick the Brave. Today, my guest is Seth Pepper. Seth is a high-performance mental coach for elite athletes. Additionally, he is two-time national champion swimmer. Seth, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invite.
I know I introduced you a little bit, but could you tell the listeners a little more about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I appreciate you asking. Well, my story is personal first. So when I was really young, I had this dream of going to the Olympics, but I didn't do a lot about it until I was 14 years old. And then when I was 14, I decided I needed to go and do it. And so I watched the Olympics with the idea of choosing a sport. And at the same time, my dad gave me a book on the power of the mind. Okay, so I started by doing the visualization and all the mental training. And I was also training, learning how to swim. I didn't know how to swim at all. I just had this dream. And in 4 years, I became a state champion. So that was a lot to do in a short amount of time. And then I went to the university. And by the time I graduated, I was a two-time national champion. So I was able to accomplish a lot from just an idea.
I like to swim.
Excellent.
During COVID, can't. We have two pools, one inside and one outside, but COVID ruined that this summer.
Yeah, I know. Not many pools open right now.
So my first question is, this podcast is about people who help others. You have many things going on in your life. How do you strive to help other people as you do all your jobs?
No, that's another great question. I like to say that I feel like I help others by helping myself heal, because I always feel like we're healing. That's just my take on life. And so by helping others to heal themselves, I help heal myself. So I feel like we're all in this together. So when I do mental training, performance mental training, I'm really trying to give people access to their full potential. So those are big words. I'm really trying to get them out of their own way, because a lot of times we get in our own way.
Did you train swimmers or like basketball, or swimmers like athletes? Actually swimmers and basketball, or just swimmers?
Actually, I do not work with any swimmers, ironically. I work with basketball, football. So I work with NBA, NFL, pro soccer players, a lot of pro tennis players, a lot of pro golfers. So all the different sports.
What made you get on the positivity track?
Well, that's a good question. I remember after I was national champion, my coach stopped me on the pool deck, when we were working out. And he asked me that question in a different words. He said, "Do you know why you're so good?" And I remember it stopped me in my tracks, because he had never asked me anything like that. So I thought about it, and I gave him some standard answers. I work harder than anyone. I'm really focused, all these different things that you normally would say. He says, "No, it's because you're the most positive person I've ever met, because you feed off of negativity. Like, and negativity when we're doing things and we're working on things is actually giving us something to work on." So I loved having a race that didn't go so well, where I'd actually work on something and sink my teeth into something. So I was always looking for what we call critical analysis. So I love turning negative into positive. That's my favorite thing in the world.
What is your biggest impact you've had in people's lives, and how do you think you've done that?
I think For me, with each person that I work with, I'm trying to have a significant impact on their life. Okay. So I work with not only athletes, but I also work with people in business. I work with people all over the world. I work with anywhere from an 8-year-old all the way up to a 60-year-old. And I work in different spaces with athletics, business, and also I work with film directors, actors, and musicians. So I'm really trying to help everyone to, like my saying, when I was 7 years old, I had this saying pop in my head, unlimit your potential. So that's what I try to do, is help people so that they can get out of their own way and just unlimit their potential.
With the coronavirus impacting people's lives, what do you do to stay positive with the coronavirus?
So I've always been a person that likes to have things very, very simple. Okay. So it'd be like maybe a jail cell, where there's no distractions and it's just you dealing with yourself. And so from the very beginning, I've known, inside that this is actually one of the greatest opportunities of our life. Okay. Because the resistance is where you find opportunity. So when things are normal, they're just normal, and everyone's going about their business. But when adversity happens, then that separates people. Who are going to be the top performers and who are going to be the people standing around waiting for things to get back to normal? So that's what I try and coach people. And, is now there's a lot of adversity, but at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think this is the greatest time of our life, at least for me. And I always say, we're writing our book, okay, with our life. So we have our whole biography that's happening as we live each day. Every year, every season is a new chapter. Every day in the actions that you do, that's how you write your page and what you do each day. So I said, let's make this COVID chapter the most interesting chapter of our entire book. Okay, does that make sense?
I'm actually writing a book.
There you go.
I'm not writing it. My ghostwriter is writing it. What I wish I knew before cancer may have a different title because we're like working it out. But
yeah.
In your work, you find yourself with dealing with all sorts of people, and as you do deal with them, some are more positive than others. What do you do to stay positive with the negative people that might be out there?
Well, I always feel that everything serves a purpose. Okay. There's a basic belief, your obstacle is your way. It's got based on this old philosophy called Stoicism. Okay. Thousands of years old. And it's just this idea that when you get an obstacle, like your obstacle is different than my obstacle. And then I have children your age, and they have obstacles that are different than other children's obstacles. But if we move into our obstacles, that becomes our way. That's where we learn about ourselves. Okay. And so I always try to encourage people that when something's there, it's a resistance or it's uncomfortable, that's where a life lesson is. So I'm always trying to encourage people to move into the discomfort. Okay. Learn to make the discomfort become comfortable, because you get used to it. You go, okay, it's just the way it is. I got to wake up in the morning. I got to make my bed. I got to help out with chores. That's just the way it is. And I can either fight it or I can move with it. And so I try to teach people to move with it.
People are different and want different things. Do you ever think about how your positivity brings people together?
Definitely. The way that I approach, just the way I coach people on the mental training, but ironically, it's really about action. So if we're just thinking about things, then it doesn't add up to much. So I'm always trying to get people to do more, okay? And the way that you do more is that you talk differently, you think differently. And so when you start to have confidence, you give other people the ability to have confidence. So when you're in the room, you encourage others to grow too. So that's a really important part, is that I reach out to people. I want to meet people like yourselves with inspiring stories. I want to share my inspiring story. Part of my story that I didn't tell you yet was that when I first started with this dream of going, after the sport, my hero is in Sports Illustrated. And I took his picture and I cut it out and I put it on my wall. And then I took my picture and I put it so the two of us were touching. So it looked like he was reaching out to me. And I saw that every day. Every day I would see this over and over and over. When you fast forward 8 years later, when I won the national title, guess who handed me the trophy when I was the national champion?
Hero.
That's the person. Yeah, exactly. My hero was there. So dreams can come true. And that's what I want to tell people is that you have to see it up here. You got to see it between your ears first, and then you can make a reality.
What are the long-term goals in terms of what you can do for other people?
Well, I have a lot of really powerful stories of taking someone that was struggling with, I look for patterns. So when I see someone that's constantly getting in their own way, I want to help give them access to their dreams. And so I was able to help someone make it into the NBA who before was blocking themselves. And when I see stories like that and I feel stories like that, that's very exciting just to see that the same person on Monday is the same person on Thursday, but on Thursday, he makes it to the NBA, And what's the difference? So the difference was his mind. It was how he was thinking, whether he was blocking himself or whether he was allowing himself. So yeah, definitely I try and help people. That's how I really start with people is that my coaching comes from, what do you want to do? What are your goals? So we spend a ton of time on goals and dreams. And a lot of times when you start with people, they don't even want to admit their goals and dreams because they don't want to get disappointed. So I make sure that we really work on that part so that we allow you to dream. Because if you don't have any dreams, where are we going? We need to know where the plane's going to land.
I always ask this question on my podcast. So who do you think is someone positive that should be on my podcast in the future?
Oh, yeah. I was excited about telling you this. A friend of mine, Anita Nall, she was an Olympic gold medalist, and she was a world record holder at the age of 16. And she's gone from there to now she's a nutrition coach with like the NFL Combine and top MMA stars. So yeah, I reached out to her and got permission, and she said she's looking forward to talking with you, Nick.
Thank you.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.